The all daddy of them all, the Lich King. It's a typical 3-phase fight with 2 transitions, making it 5 total phases that we will endure. Phase 1 is pretty hectic. You have one tank tanking the Lich King and Drudge Ghouls. You have another tank tanking the Shambling Horror, or Shambling Horrors, depending on how many we have up, and Drudge Ghouls. The raid will have to only pay attention to one major mechanic during normal on this fight, where that involves Necrotic Plague. Necrotic Plague is a debuff that will be cast on a random raid member, and they need to take it towards the Shambling Horror tank, staying behind the Shambling Horror, not crossing in front of it for chance of being one-shotted, and being cleansed by a healer or by that tank, depending on who's assigned, and transferring the Necrotic Plague to either a Drudge Ghoul or the Shambling. Where we will do this for the entirety of the Phase 1, so that we can stack a Necrotic Plague onto the Shambling Horror, letting it do the damage to it, rather than the raid being forced to do increased DPS to another target. Lich King will transition into the first transition phase at 70%, and ideally we have only one Shambling or 2 Shamblings up, with one being nearly dead. The Shambling Horror tank should fuck off to the side and be tanking that with only being required to cleanse themselves. It's ideally to use a Paladin for this because they can also stun if there's an Enrage that goes out. Enrages on the Shambling should be macro set by a Hunter to cast Trank Shot on them as soon as they enrage. But if that's not possible at that moment, a Paladin can use Hammer of Justice or Holy Wrath to stun them so that they don't just one-shot the tank. During the transition phase, Raging Spirits will spawn off of random raid members and should be tanked by a non-Paladin tank. Ideally, you have either your DK or your Bear tanking them so that they're not facing anyone in the raid, so that when they do their cone attack, which is a silence, it only hits that target. At the moment that the Shambling Horrors are finished, your Prot Paladin generally will stand behind the Raging Spirit, not attacking it, but rather ready to cleanse the other tank so that the healers aren't required to, and they can focus on healing during this phase. As we get better and better at this fight, you will start seeing times where you'll have your Fire Mages, potentially Shadow Priests, and even sometimes Hunters attacking the Lich King during the entirety of the transition phase because they have long enough range to do so. While we're standing on the outer ring during the transition, it is required that the frozen orbs that the Lich King spawns be killed before they reach the raid, because if they hit a person, they will detonate and launch people off the edge, killing them. At the end of the transition phase, we will then move back in. The outer edge will start to crumble and despawn, and we have to be back inside on the inner disc, starting phase 2. At this point, any Raging Spirits that are still up should be the priority target and should be pulled up to the Lich King, but not facing the Lich King tank, just off center, off kilter from them. But so the raid can be stacked directly behind the Lich King and DPSing the Raging Spirits as well. The first major ability that happens during phase 2 is going to be the Valkyrs that come out. In 10 man, 1 will spawn, and 25 you'll see 3 spawn. If we are stacked all correctly and all our characters facing the same direction, the 3 Valkyrs should pick up the players and all go in the same direction. If we can manage to do this, it'll help us on our heroic progression on this fight, because the Valkyr become a major part of wipes during heroic progression. You will use AoE stuns are most likely the best, or often the best used for 25, versus in 10 man you would use a directed single target stun. So AoE stuns on the 3 Valkyrs to stun them while the raid DPSs them, all waiting for the Defile timer. The 3 Valkyrs need to be killed before they reach the edge of the platform, or they will drop our raid members off of the edge and kill them, taking them completely out of fight and not making them available for a battle res. If the Valkyr picks up a Warlock and they have their portal down, that Valkyr can be ignored and they can portal themselves back onto the platform. The second major ability is going to be Defile, and this will arguably cause a lot of raid wipes. Defile is targeted on a single player and will drop off of them when the Lich King casts it. The idea to this is you want to have the raid spread to one direction and drop the defile so it's not in the middle of the platform. But for every tick of damage it does, it grows. So if it drops on multiple people, it will grow fast and overtake the entire platform, wiping the raid. The second spawn of Valkyries, the defile will come a lot quicker, so that the raid will actually need to be spread out. As soon as the Valkyrie pick up, the raid will need to spread and prepare for that defile. The third spawn of Valkyries will be almost on top of each other, so the Valkyrie and the defile will come almost directly at the same time. This will be one of the hardest phases to get through during progression, but if we can manage to drop the defile just to one side of the platform and then kill the Valkyrie immediately after, we'll be in the clear. Once the Lich King reaches 40%, we will go into the second transition, where it'll be the same Raging Spirits, but one extra Raging Spirit will spawn on this transition, so the DPS will really need to be pumping on the Ragings. Again, as we get better at this, we will be able to have some ranged DPS attacking the Lich King, lowering his percentages during that transition. Orbs also will still need to be killed. Once the transition phase is over, we'll move back in and we'll start phase 3. In a perfect world, we just stay right on the one edge, and we let the Lich King come to the tank. Tank then picks them up, flips the Lich King around so that the raid is between the edge and the Lich King, and then the tank is towards the center. We'll stay there until Vile Spirits spawn. You'll see them pretty easily. They come out of the Lich King, and then we should move across the platform to the other side. Once we move to the other side, the raid should be on the outer edge again, prepared for defile, as it will still spawn in this phase, so being spread out for defile based on the timer, and ready to avoid taking damage from Vile Spirits. There's two options for this. We can try to kill them, which is not advised because it's a waste of damage, or we can use soakers to soak them. Ideally, we run multiple Shadow Priests. This should never be a problem. You have Shadow Priests disperse soak them. You can have Pally's Bubble soak them. You can have DK's AMS soak them, but this is not advised. You can also have Hunter's Deterrence soak them, but this is also not advised. Mages can try to Ice Block soak them, but because they can't move while Ice Blocked, this can be an ineffective way. Ultimately, if any of these strategies with involving soaking, it's ideal for the raid to either be all stacked in one small spot so that the soak happens properly, or if it's going to be a less than ideal soak, we have the raid spread out, especially the ranged, so if they have to eat one of the Vile Spirits, it does not kill them. This is one of the abilities that needs to be called on the fly and needs to be known when it takes place. The other ability that happens in Phase 3 is Fury or Frostmourne. Randomly, one player will be sucked into, in 10 men I believe it's one player, I believe in 25 it is 3. But they will be sucked inside Frostmourne, and will have a mob inside that needs to be killed. There will be Tyrannus Menethil in there as well. For healers, that you must heal them. For DPS, you must protect them. But ultimately, you need to be prepared to interrupt them. They will do a cast that if the cast gets off, whether you out DPS the timing on the cast, or you interrupt it and continue killing it, you will need to make sure you interrupt this, because if you do not, you will die, and you dying inside Frostmourne enrages Arthas, and he will one-shot your tanks. If you're going to die and you can't get the interrupt, it is advised that you call out in Discord that you will be dying inside, so that tanks and hunters can be prepared to ping-pong the boss during his enrage, so that we don't wipe due to that issue. Assuming that all of this goes correctly, the boss will reach his 10% and he casts Fury, or casts for like Frostmourne Hungers or whatever the hell it's called, and wipes the raid. Do not release. Sit through the fucking 4 minutes of RP, accept the res, and finish the last 10% and get some loots. That's the entirety of the raid. I will do a second audio for the Lich King for Heroic, because there's more mechanics than that.